The Book of Esther, chapter 1. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus, which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over 127 provinces, that in those days when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, the palace, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces, being before him, when he shewed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 180 days. And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan, the palace, both unto great and small, 7 days, in the court of the garden of the king's palace, where were white, green, and blue hangings, fastened with cords of fine linen, and purple to silver rings and pillars of marble. And beds were of gold and silver upon a pavement of red and blue and white and black marble. And they gave them drink in vessels of gold, the vessels being diverse one from another, and royal wine in abundance according to the state of the king. And the drinking was according to the law, none did compel, for so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house, that they should do according to every man's pleasure. Also the Vashti, the queen, made a feast for the women in the royal house, which belonged to King Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zathar, and Carcas, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal, to show the people and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to look on. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Then the king said to the wise men which knew the times, for so was the king's manner towards all who knew law and judgment, and the next to him was Karshena, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsena, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face, and which set the first on the kingdom. What shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to the law, because she hath not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains? And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen hath not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes and to all the people that are in the provinces of the king Ahasuerus. For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes, when it shall be reported. The king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. Likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes, which I have heard of the deed of the queen. Thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath. If it please the king, let there go out a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and that the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. And when the king's decree which he shall make shall be published throughout all the empire, for it is great, all the wives shall give to their husbands honor, both to great and small. And the saying pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. For he sent letters unto all the king's provinces, into every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people. In the very beginning of the book of Esther, we run across a situation which you need to understand in order to appreciate everything that happens afterwards. King Ahasuerus, who's just introduced now, is actually the name Ahasuerus is a transliteration of the Hebrew word, which we would know more from the Greek form of the word, which was Xerxes, or, as we have read in previous chapters of other books, Artaxerxes. He was the fabulous warrior king of the Persian Empire, which had 127 provinces in it, and he ruled everything from India through to Ethiopia in Africa. Literally everything. And he had a reputation as an absolute monarch that he had to maintain. In order to have the empire stay together, you couldn't rebel against the king, otherwise you would be killed. Just that simple. No rebellion, no matter how slight. If you were dealing with a monarch who has life and death control over you, regardless of who you are, you say yes boss when he tells you to do something. So here he has all of the princes of the 127 provinces there, and they're having a big banquet. And apparently he gives instructions to the people who are doing the serving that they are to give whatever amount of wine anybody wants to have. After 7 days, and of course they did not understand in those days just how disastrous alcohol could be to people, and they just kept on drinking. And drinking, and drinking, and drinking, and drinking. And after 7 days, these guys would have been, quite likely, totally drunk, the vast majority of them. Anyway, it says, so the king was merry with wine on the 7th day, and he sent his 7 chamberlains. Now, if you sent 1 chamberlain, it was a request. You sent 7 chamberlains, you were expecting obedience. This is what expected. The chamberlains were the guys who were the messengers from the king. They were the guys that made things happen. If you sent a chamberlain, it was an important request. You sent all 7 chamberlains, that was like a royal command appearance. To Queen Vashti, his queen, because she was very fair to look on. And with the expectation that she's going to come and show how beautiful she is to all the princes. He'd shown them everything else. She was the final wonderful thing he was going to show off, and she doesn't come. Understand, the king could have had her killed just right then. Could have sent soldiers and just said, throw a spear through her, cut her in half, whatever. I think he loved her, but at the same time he's now got a problem. He's got all the princes of all the territories, all the guys who are in charge of every province, all of whom would think, hey, his wife doesn't have to do what he says. Maybe I don't have to. Maybe I can get away with it. So he has to make an example of her. What does he do? They come up with a decision. They're going to remove her as queen and find somebody else who is easier to deal with. And why she came, we don't know. She could have decided she wasn't going to parade herself and her beauty off before a bunch of people that were drunk. That would have been perfectly understandable today, but in those days, that was absolutely unacceptable. If the king said you showed up, you showed up. Didn't make any difference what the circumstances were, you showed up. And so when she decided not to, well, she took her life in her hands, for sure. She survived. But she lost being queen, and they started looking for somebody else, which is how we come into the story of Esther.